The aroma of the barbecue is still there out in the street after your nighttime suppers. But we shall still not be in any way indulgent to you. We shall continue with fortitude along the lines of our program. Today is the day of independence of Russia. I congratulate you on that day, and I think that if this is the independence from the Soviet Union, then this is very good. But independence from the Soviet Union seems to be reviewed, so I don't know what kind of independence we're talking about, but I congratulate you on the Day of Russia. The second thing I would like to say, many of us, including the great Russian poet Alexander Blok, Russia is a female country. Its poetical image is female. And why am I talking about this? Because today is the two wonderful ladies, cultural thinkers, who are in the school today, Natalia Zubarevich and Tatiana Vorozheikina, whom I very much liked to come here. And for about 7 years I have tried to make them come, and I congratulate you all on having the opportunity to attend some of the most interesting concepts related to the economy and social status of society. I'm very grateful to them. I would like to say that when we have experts and when people review our schedules and programs, Mr. Auzan said, is that this program is indeed a beautiful creation. Well, sorry for if I'm. All I do is I count numbers. Concepts are a big problem. So what I will try to do is to show you what is happening, to show you how one can be soberly react to political statements, and to talk about the interrelation between these items and the civil life. So there will be two formats, both quite commonplace, but I would certainly encourage your questions. By the way, everything, the presentation is widely available, and all my presentations can be accessed. I encourage your questions. As I said, if you sharply disagree with something, then please allow this to be done even during while I speak. How long shall I have? All right, 25 to 30 minutes. If there's something unclear, please raise your hand. the basis for civic life. No, it is understood that this is the basis for society. But I'm not a cultural expert. I'm not an expert on political science. So as I said, I only count numbers. So I will be presenting to you some numerical values. This format, as in the PhD thesis, you have to say that this is what I will talk about and this is what I will not talk about. So let us move along the plan. Well, first of all, we have entered stagnation as early as in 2013. This is the result, as a result of the end of the year. The dynamics of the industrial production throughout the country is zero. In the first quarter of this year is about 1% maximum, but this is a statistical, this may be within the statistical error. We have a zero growth of industrial production. If anybody is interested about the region per se, you can take a look at all the numbers for your regions. What happens with the investments? We are hearing the same bells. This is not stagnation. This is more of a downturn, because a decline in investment produces recession. So it's -4% in the first 3 months of this year, and this is quite dangerous. This was even before Crimea, because we're talking about the natural trend in the Russian economy. The worst situation is in Siberia, the Far East, and the northwest of Russia. You might have seen, read in the newspapers as to how much the state does to enliven the economy. Some call it the mobilization model, and I call it the imitation model, because the mobilization model is that when you're sent to be done something, and if you don't perform, you're shot. This is what I call mobilization economy. This is not mobilization economy. This is an imitation. We don't have violence so far. So here's what happens when the economy is imitation. You can see the Far East here on the graph. The share on the eve of the summit of the Asia the Pacific Organization, the ATC, and then 6%. The downturn in the investments in the Far East is 47%, almost twice, and 27% across the Far East, which means that concentrated investments of the state are not matched by the business investments. So when you're told how we're going to develop X, Y, and Z, try to treat it quite moderately and peacefully. These investments will not have much effect. Shall we have any strain on the labor market? The answer is, if we see them, they will only be very local. Number one reason is that we have a minimal unemployment for the past 20 years. And I have not entered the data on the gender pyramid, but you must have known this lady. Here's the actual age when the thighs get into the very thin legs, which means that the next generation will be 1/3 less. They will not have much problems with the labor, and the baby boomers are now entering the pension age. There are a lot of us, which means that that there will be a lot of dumping. But the other question is, how would the government resolve? Will they increase the number of the Central Asian labor, or will they make productivity? So I think that what they will be doing is this opening the doors, shutting them up, opening the doors, shutting them up. And we shall be seeing this for a long time. This is a format which has been institutionally entered into the system, and our next slide. Here you can see some very serious signs. Mr. Auzan told you about the social contract. The old social contract has expired, and you can see how it expired. Here you can see the annual distribution of the income. And in 2009, you saw that the development rate was 1%, and finally for the first 3 months of this year is minus 1.1%. What does this mean? The incomes don't grow. We no longer want this social contract. Well, let's not simplify it. Let's not oversimplify it. Let us not primitivize, because the government has indeed had some buffers. If the social contract doesn't work with the whole population, then you have to target your efforts against the electorally important groups. And indeed, the pensions and the salaries went up. They do it all right. I say they because I do not take these decisions, because you really can't take a decision on raising the salaries where the economy is in stagnation. So it is an entirely political decision, and there is one third component, which is an even further temporal rate at the salary increase for all law enforcement and police bodies. Targeted raise of income for the politically important groups of population. Can this go along for a long? Can this go on for a longer time? Yes, it can. So we shall be seeing this this new format. So the government is indeed adapting, accommodating itself to the changing conditions. But then the question is, what are we to do? It's up to you. But here is the mine which is under this system. And please talk to Tatiana Vorozheikin when she speaks, because this mine is indeed the mine, the huge gaps in income. This graph has been calculated by Tatiana Vocharova, one of the best Russian experts on the social differences. If you take up these 20% groups, you can take a look how it was going down. Then the first 20% went up, then they all went up, and now you can take a look at where we arrived. So it was the flatland, and all the changes took place during the economic growth. The fifth part has 2.6 times higher than in the Soviet times. The fourth has about 1.4 times higher than the Soviet times. But the lower two still have income under the Soviet salaries. 40% of the country live poorer than they did under the Soviet times. What do we want from them? Economically motivated behavior, rational solutions? Yes, indeed, we are quitting the model of the survival economy, but the income for these people is not such for them to become independent actors prepared for political action. And the third part, which is the middle, just went up and over the Soviet times. So the crisis, on the one hand, is a good source of sobriety, but on the other hand, the decrease in income conserves and tends to conserve the old style. The old lifestyle, and the inequality is tremendous. It is huge. How will this work? Will it transform into the social protests as it did in Latin America? Or else we shall see how the wealth seeps down into the society, and the middle is between the two. Can this system survive for a long time? We don't know. Now, how do the people react to this? We believe, or people think, that Russia is not a high mobility country. Well, that's not quite true, because first of all, we cannot be judging or measuring the mobility, social mobility, too well. But even if we take the actual data of the migration service, we are at about 300,000 people of inflow per year. But according to the new methods, we are using and we're taking into account all the migrants which live here for longer than 11 months. So how is this balance distributed? If you look at the numbers, you'll understand it. 100,000 plus in Moscow, 100,000 for the Moscow region, 200,000 plus. Yet another 100,000 for St. Petersburg, and Sochi and Krasnodar region. So this is where the Russians go, which means that this is an almost dust-sucking and the brain-sucking energy of the capitals. Will the labor market accommodate these people? So far, yes, while the stagnation has not evolved into a true crisis. Now, what will happen if this continues to happen like that? And I have a big question, because the social strain goes up. How will this change? Will this change through the xenophobic things or through integration of people with the new understanding? It is not clear. And what is the role of the civil life? Because it's 200,000 per year. That's a lot. I shall now I will now be talking about the parrying the political statements of the authorities by the economic data. So let us turn east. We shall be trading with the east. We shall be talking with the east. We shall be orienting ourselves towards the east. 50% of the Russian export is Europe. 50% of Russian export. Can you imagine a big country like ours with the huge flows of commodities and goods, which says bye-bye to these 50% and goes to the line where the export is only 6%. The economy is an inertial system, and even if you build another pipeline, that cannot change in a principal way. So all talks about the reprofiling of Russia towards the east is well politically motivated. But what may really happen, this is the import from China. And here I can say that if there are restrictions, that the Chinese import, which is about will move forward, and we're reading Sorokin about the red Mercedes, which was assembled in China. So try to treat this with greater ease. So let's take a look at this export. You can see this downturn in here, the export, the import, and here is China, 7.5 times difference. So I think that some shifts will take place, but I do not expect any serious. And clearly, we shall be seeing these very important changes, and they will not be administered, at least in the mineral sphere, in the sphere of the mineral resources, whereas in the financial sectors, one would expect that without an interest increase or raise, one would see that there will be some repercussions. So let's take China as an example of an investor party. Can you see this little caption? The share of China is 1.3%. Over the past several years, if you take this as an example, this was 22.9%, and the share of Cyprus and the Netherlands is 54%. Should I comment on Cyprus? Well, the Netherlands would be pretty much like Cyprus, except that it's not a classical offshore, but a balancing system. Half of what has been invested into this country is Russian money coming from abroad. Now, question number one to be asked. But if China adds up, that's fine, that's perfectly snug. But if China goes on investing into the fields which where the room has already been taken by the Russian business or the Russian money, we would see quite a bit of a collision, and I'm not quite sure as to who wins. So both on the investment plane and on the financial plane, and one would say, "Oh, look how fine and grand it is." But if you really distill this cap, then you'd see the transaction that has been channeled through the offshores and then come back into Russia. This is not investment. When you're buying 25% plus one share of a company, this may well be shaped as an investment, but in turn we're seeing the resiphoning of the Russian money that was taken abroad and then coming back into these fields. So that we can see this situation being quite complex with the investment. So the more repressive is the system, the further Cyprus and the Netherlands will move from Russia. And when the brook runs dry for the Russian investment, the Chinese share may go up to 20%, and then I will be told, well, look, your expert opinion has proven wrong. But in essence, they're quite right if you calculate it on the pie chart. You can see this. Here, the federal budget of the Russian Federation. There was a one-third distribution, three-thirds. Here's the VAT, mainly collected in Moscow region, St. Petersburg, and it is not a particularly changed. And here are the customs fees, and if we subtract what we pay for cars and for garments imported from abroad, then a good part of these customs tariffs are the export tariffs that we pay, that are paid by the extraction companies. So if we reduce the export of oil and gas and mineral rent, then this third of the Russian federal budget will continue shrinking, and there will be no money not only to militarize the economy, but indeed this will curtail the help to the Russian regions.
This is another graph. This is the purely oil and gas tax on extracted subsoil deposits. 50% it's taken from all is the federal budget. It means it's extremely vulnerable, and you don't need to have really strong sanctions. It would be enough is to slow down export-import without even growing oil and gas prices, and then will begin to sink. So the question is, we already have begun to do it. This is in revenue of the constituent entities. As you can see, they're slowing their growth. This discounts inflation. Once we put inflation in, then this income doesn't grow. This is the share of federal transfers into the revenue of the regions. It's already going down. Moreover, in physical rubles, it's also falling. In fact, the economic mine lies in the regions. Federal budget is horribly vulnerable to oil and gas, whereas regional budgets, where they depend on anything from the poor economic market situation, that's because they have huge bulk of debt and many troubles. This is the newest data on 13, minus 13% profit tax, minus 6% transfer. Look what we are like. We are now the country, if you want to say that the civic position of civil society, they matter. Give this figure alone. Every third ruble of the budget in the constituent entities, municipalities, this is income tax. These are not corporations. This is us. This is what our accounts office pays for us. For physical persons, it depends upon us. So please hear my voice, because it's myself, it's not the company, it's not the Rosneft. So this is where in the regions this becomes even, the voice becomes heard better. Now the government tells you have no right to tell us anything. Look how much we invest into human capital. This is expenditure on education, plus 14%, culture, plus 12%, healthcare, plus 8%. Try to reproach us with anything, but we perfectly understand it's just support of the electoral base. You have very simple argument. Human capital investment is measured not only by the growing general amount, but efficacy too. And if it is at this very moment, in dozens of regions, half of all budget expenditure, it means wages and salaries of people who receive their payment from the budget, and in many regions it accounts for 40%, and all the increase is not so much investment into efficacy, it's just raising the salaries, then it's a somewhat distorted picture. Where shall we see problems and protests? Well, you see utilities plus 2%, inflation is, may I remind you, 6.5. In real terms, it means a cost. Protests would be about social policy, by 1%. Welfare benefits are paid, but if we take into consideration inflation, it will be -5. This is where the mines are accumulating. Now look, what the government will be proud of. You should know how to debate with it. Every fourth ruble in the ruble is now spent on education. Don't tell me that we are a country that develops human capital. They would never claim that. Look at this dynamics. This is an argument. Qualitative measurement. Would graduates leave school? Money certainly matters, but money alone cannot address this issue. And it seems to me that we should understand that on the both sides of the debating civil society, if it can do it, and in decision makers, they have their own arguments. So mottos and slogans alone do not work. It doesn't. This is where we need to have clear-cut argument about what are we unhappy about. Very briefly, the results. Last year I was telling you about the shortage, budget shortage. Remember what it was like last year, and look what it is in 2013. Now look what it's like. The situation has been aggravated everywhere. The problems of deficit and further problem of debts is the central problem, which is the only thing that is now being discussed, and in the regions these problems have to be raised. Otherwise they will be decided and resolved behind the curtains, and we will do what we did again. Somebody has just got these debts, over 2 trillion rubles, huge amounts of money. Somebody, just because they invested into the infrastructure, hoping that industrial growth would continue, whereas others just because they don't know how to manage budget finances, because they had to pay salaries and wages, they got loans and facilities from the banks. They're different debt problems. We need and you must raise them, because otherwise this problem will be addressed, I'm sorry to say, very much behind the curtains. Then Tatarstan and Krasnodarsky Krai will address it, and those who are saving the Altai region will remain with nothing behind it. The last point I wish to make is about the Crimea. Do we need to intimidate people, to frighten people who are very happy with Krymnash, that the costs would be huge? Well, it seems to me that there is an old adage. You have shouted out, "Here is the wolf," you shouted once again, "Here is the wolf," but they won't hear you when the wolf really comes. Let's agree that economically, annexation or reunification with the Crimea, it's another Sochi project. It's a matter of philosophy. Bolivar, can he carry us away with yet another Sochi? Well, it seems like perception, yes, we can do it. Yes, we can do it, because there is still maneuver about resources. We can lower the exchange rate of ruble and make another trillion and use it. For this reason, I was saying, count the money in your own pocket, but I repeated it many times. It will not happen overnight, and it will not happen the day after tomorrow. This is the last drop effect, because the Crimea will enhance the wrong trend of the very inefficient spending. Let me put it very bluntly. This can turn out to be like what Ligachev anti-alcohol campaign. You are young people here, but this is actually was cut short, the Russian budget. Yes, they could survive it, but what happens next, I do not really know. This is in rubles. As you plan, I gave you in percentage of expenditure so that you should understand. 1%, 1.5%, if we look at the federal budget. If you take year-on-year expenses, including the infrastructure, this will be something like 2% of the regions and 1.5% of the federal budget. Of course they can withstand it. But the thing is that the speed raises the price, and stealing will make it worse and longer. So when I've just done this, let's now talk about civic life. Since I'm not a sociologist or culturologist, I understand it very simply economically. One format of the civil life is protests, because we see accumulation of what happens, and then I can tell you what will be the risk zones. It's absolutely obvious that they will be industrial cities mostly, where they will cut jobs in some business. We can have an approximate list. May I assure you, it's perfectly known to the government. And this is where I'm going to tell you serious risks. I do not really see them. Do you know why? Because we have had an example that worked of interaction between government and business as they cut employment. Classical example is what Rusal does in North Ural, in very much problematic situation. The people who live there are not happy, but there is no open, because the system is very flexible. Some people get other jobs, some get to the next sort of facility, next works if they can. Other people can, with a good compensation package, get an early retirement, and it's done step by step, not on months lookouts. This is a forbidden option. The conclusion is simple. The government, together with business, already have learned to counter these risks. And while risks are about 10 or at most 20 cities, this system works. If all of a sudden, this is something I do not see yet, we see a soaring number of such cities, but then it will fail. But you know, social capital is, so people are very ready to protest, but not ready for non-mobilization type. So growing tension, yes, certainly, but do let us immediately understand. I tried to show you this new social contract. This will first appeal to us, those who do not fit in, those who make many self-employed, educated people in the cities. We fell out of their social contract. We're not needed. We do not belong. We get ready and we develop our own strategies of how we will adapt to this situation. We shall be displeased, yes. The question is, does anybody care but ourselves? The question is open. I think that this accumulation, when it accumulates, is very dangerous for the government, but it will not happen tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. What happened elsewhere? They will curtail the social services budget, because you see how it is now being shrinked. I'll show what happens with healthcare if we discount or don't look at territorial funds of healthcare insurance. It's minus 8%. Well, they cannot do it in the street, because in the street, but who cares? Who can calculate how much, say, they cost on dressing, on expenditure, on consumables, and whatever? Huge number of ways for savings, and this is how it's going to shrink. And this is the reason for discontent everywhere. But smart governors do it in a very nice manner. Those who are the first to do, they will lose their jobs. It is the government. They know how to measure discontent. Most banal thing. Well, a euphoria about Crimea will soon pass. I don't know for how long this will go, this slope down would go. What other trick the government will invent to invent this spike? It's amazing that the spike of Georgia and Crimea is the same, then it means that it works. Okay, what else can be invented? But honestly, I'm not really a political technologist, so okay, let's see how these risks will be mitigated. You're all of you politically active. You see what is going about governor's election, where 30 governors who are again sort of. We will not say nothing new. Political technologists will work, but when this series passes, I would be very interesting to measure the temperature in society, as they refuse a direct election of the mayors. It has not yet over. Kuivashov, or one of the most silliest, who want to be ahead of the trend. Many are not just looking around. If they put pressure on them, everybody will run away, but everybody can make it. And it's not about the victory of the civil society. It's just that the regional government says, please don't trouble. We may see things that would be much worse. This is common sense works. Well, okay, we're all here, NGO suppression, we're all here. I would say that young people feel intimidated. Well, I remember talks in the kitchen. It was a university for me, sort of years. Okay, we'll do it again. Now we have the possibility to do it in a different manner and use it. It's ugly, it's disgusting, but you can't shut it up, for sure. So, if we understand it, how shall we understand work in the future, or a sort of another or second civil life, based upon territorial differences, accumulated into... Can we continue as a society non-government investment into real human capital? So educational formats, well, let me see what Kudrin is doing right now. I'm not quite sure that there is high efficiency, right, because sometimes the audience is just accidental. The project cannot just be underway when there is no control or feedback. This is something that is missing, but this is something that needs to be done. Let's see if Khodorkovsky can do something. The speaker says, God help him, to which interpreter begs to differ dramatically. So we try to do something in our universities, we're trying to expand it, certainly in a disunited and weak manner, but I have this impression that unless they cannot overwhelm them all, and they cannot, for example, the people do not immigrate, I certainly am not going to immigrate. That means the drop, as it drops, it will make a hole in a stone. This is a Russian saying. Well, social initiative from the grassroots level. After Bolotny, it seems there is nothing there, but may I repeat what I know? In communities that were formed from the bottom in terms of interaction and helping children with special needs. Life goes on. Life goes on. Any structural unions and associations, grassroots level from the young people, that works. This is where it is not my sort of sphere responsibility. This is where I put a question mark. How can we support this formation of new social capital through election? Well, I'm not sure. Well, and think where we will look for them, and we will surely find them. To be honest, I have this impression that in the cities a certain driver could be anything about developing the urban environment. Politically they're neutral. They're very sensitive for the people who live in cities, for whom the environment around them matters. And at that time they're very much politically oriented, because then you begin to promote your candidates. And I suppose this is the this is a bypass which we can use. What happens next? Independent evaluation and assessment of the state policy. Can I just sort of take this subject? After I had some beer, two great people, one lady is emigrated and the other accused me on both sides that I'm a very poor expert. I immediately agreed, no problem, yes, that's the case. How can you speak about your figures when you should indeed say we stole the Crimea? As a citizen, I just went to protest for this rally for peace, but as an expert, nobody really cares for my emotions. Everybody asks me about the spheres where I'm dwelling at. It's cowardice, but since I had a lot of beer, people are good, they got all excited. So if that independent evaluation, which is needed badly, you will really laugh at it, but it's there, it's available. It is not always public, and they show interest from the bottom, sort of from the grassroots level. Yesterday, just a week ago, we are just gathering and comparing our watch. When they draft this 2020 foolish strategy, regional experts gathered to compare the notes, because they just cast it in iron, as they put it in Grenade. Our first steps were direct, honest government elections. We all understand the events, but there is no way. Is that expertise available? Yes. Next week I'm delivering a lecture to very serious guys, and I'll put you using academic format, and I'll show them exactly the pictures I'm showing to you. This is certainly needed. This is something that needs to be done at every front. And it seems to me that expert community, at least part of it, so far keeps repeating, yes, we're ready, and we'll do it as long as possible. And the conclusion would be very simple. Yes, despondency, yes, I talked to Roginsky in Berlin. He was just downcast. Yes, he was. But there is an entity and structure behind him that is now being destroyed, and behind you too. But what is simpler for us, for those who are lonely wolves, there is no structure entity standing behind us. So it's not easy to tackle us. But anyways, you know, as I'm wrapping up, it applies to all of us. Do what you must and let it be. Thank you. I'm ready to take Q&A.
Коллеги, доброе утро. Очень приятно, что, несмотря на естественную для 4-го или уже 5-го дня семинара.
It's very good that even on day 4 or actually day 5 even of the seminar, despite I see your black sort of eyes and you don't get enough sleep, but I'm very pleased to see you're all here and active. Somebody told me we said we are opening the day with a pessimistic presentation. I flatly disagree. I absolutely disagree because I've known Natalia Zubarevich for some 10 years, maybe more, and it seems to me that I haven't seen a bigger optimist than our distinguished experts. You've heard what she said. And the calls that she urged us to do, in my view, this is an excellent beginning for this day. Milady, you now have the floor. Good day, Anna Martinova from Sochi, Krasnodar region. I have a comment about the Crimea and the economy and social tension. Today's season in the Sochi caused social tension, although we had euphoria despite the investment because of the Olympic project. Why is this tension? Because as we have in the Russian Federation Crimea, this Krasnodar Krai region lost the monopoly on the Black Sea as a result. So there is a certain tension that a number of tourists that used to travel to Krasnodar region will go away to another shore. But my question is not about this, about the economic aspect. For the first time in 2008, Dmitry Anatolyevich Medvedev suggested for Krasnodar region another investment project. He suggested that we should set up the casino, a gambling zone. The economic crisis of the 2008 sort of postponed all this question. Again, they're now raising the issue about gambling zone to move it from Anapa to Sochi. But there is a lobby in our region who insists that the decision should be revised. My question is, why is it so important, this project for the economy of Russia, that we see such heavy fight about it, and what are the chances that it will end successfully? And briefly, your comment. In principle, the Crimea so far is not really a tough competitor for Sochi, because Sochi, in terms of price, it's a very different. There are government officials who say, look guys, who have a special, like several million people who are not now allowed to travel abroad. And they are probably yours because they make quite a lot. No, they're not keen on the Crimea. The president gave you such a gift that I don't suppose you have anything to complain about. Several million people who were barred from traveling abroad. But he's overestimated by 2 million. Yes, they're there. Just go and serve them. That's why gambling zone is not on the cards for you. They've given a nod for you. Anapa works very poorly. The company was, it was your former governor who absolutely liquidated that company. This format will first work in the Crimea, and this is where the gambling zone, there is a very high probability, together with a special economic zone, because in difficult conditions, whatever could it be, but is there any progress in developing the country from the state? You know where it is? Federal government knows how to calculate the money. The times of Ligachev, Gorbachev, who didn't understand where the money comes from. At that now they can calculate the money and the budget, and this sort of security they will certainly set up the format of a special zone, what it's going to be like, but probably they will set it up. First they have just feel this market and see where there are holes in your coat, because grey economy dominates in Crimea. With Kaliningrad, yes, they did do it. Yes, when they changed the format of the zone, certainly. Gambling, this is risks, but we'll see. But
Crimea, yes, you will look at it. What happens? Are you competitors? I don't suppose, no. I don't suppose, because you will see different price niches. But several years after that, a couple of symbolic investment when they redistribute land on the shore. Once our people come to the shore, everybody knows how it happens. A number of just emblematic construction sites, and this is we shall have real competition of business groups who will cut each other's throat, and then the answer will be very simple: the price of the ticket, the fare. So far, well, Vladimir Vladimirovich is an honest man. He made a gift to everybody, to Crimea. This subsidize the fare, and you now get government officials who will have to travel to Crimea since they are barred from traveling abroad nowadays. A colleague from Dagestan sitting opposite me. Adelshinov Ildar from Dagestan. I have a question. You are saying that the state learned how to work with the working electorate. Do you not feel that the electorate also has adapted to that, and this process is they're happy about? If there is a need and the state satisfies this need, then things are fine. And another point, in your spreadsheet you said by March decrease of revenue was -1.2 because of my process. Don't you think that by the end of the year we'll see this +2, +3%? Thank you. Do I understand you correctly that you just at the beginning of the year it all stops a degree and then it's done, but they put it on the books as if it were done in November, December? Yes, but usually the revenue didn't grow, and it didn't grow last year either. I don't know. I'm not really don't want to apply the quarter trend over a whole year, spread it, but in terms of small business and private business, there is no revenue growth. In the grey zone, no income grows. Free professions in the professional market, they know revenue growth, and then we'll see. What about the workers now? To be honest, I have no answer to your question, because discontent is there and it is accumulating. We can see it by many public opinion surveys. The situation is getting worse, that is also seen. Are people ready for other formats, for more manifestation of their discontent? In the coming 6 months after the Crimea, no, but next winter, sorry, let's measure it again. A very uncertain condition, because they've applied some patriotism, but it will not. Vaccination will not last forever. We've had these illusions. Yes, second industrial Russia, it is accumulating in discontent, whatever. It will now, together, it will join this Korolev and Begim. They will fly together. They won't. This message is very simple. No, they won't fly. For some reason, because they have instruments that can soften it, can soften. And make things steady. Your colleague, please. Stanislav Avramenko from Rostov-on-the-Don. I'm RPR Parnas. The question is, do we need for our struggle in the opposition, should we focus on educated city population, or are there any hopes or methods of how we could single out the social strata that have social contract with the state? They are both people who read budget, Cossacks. Maybe we can work with them too, or should we focus our efforts on this narrow area, and this is where we focus our efforts? First, I'm not a political technologist. Secondly, I'm a sociologist. I'm just telling you about this country. What language you use to talk to Cossacks, but you should talk to everybody. Sectarianism is a huge, is a disease of any political party. You should talk to everybody in a language they understand. But grassroots level work is not something typical where our parties are good. Natural allies, yes, there are certain educated groups of population. But even among them, as the Crimea has shown, the domineering Value is a strong state which is capable to demonstrate its power in any way it can and its strength. We're now having a very difficult situation. I've been thinking long, what can you counteract it? People have the right to think that this was done in the right manner. This is their right. No possibility to tell them that I'm smart and you're silly. I'm thinking, right, it is really a senseless position. You thus shut communication canal. You should look for some arguments. First, I try to find economic arguments that, look, we will have to pay a very high price for this. Once I've worked, I'm telling you honestly that the budget, yes, can make it, but risks lie in external relations to Russia. Will you tell Cossacks that we shall have financial sectoral measures? Will they understand you? Will they care for them? No.
And for the Cossacks, so let's leave the Cossacks out of the discussion. So your turn, please. Timken, Moskovska Oblast. First, to thank you for this wonderful, bright, spirited intervention. My question has to do with, in your lecture, you were saying that every fourth ruble in the regional budget is from the welfare fund, and so much depends. And so this model of budget federalism, that's the model that exists now. To what extent it may depend on the regional authorities and the citizens? And that's the first question. And the second question: can you briefly describe so this budget federalism, which will be more compatible with the civil life in the regional, in the regional level? So this, I would like to refer you to my lectures, last year lectures, that it shows how the distribution of taxes is organized, and so there's a huge inequality of the revenue base, so does not allow us to get the regions to get money from land where they live, because we're a rent state, and this system, that's why it's biased, and so in Moscow region everything will be bad, because in Moscow everything is fine, because in Moscow region, so the land is made of gold, and so we don't even have to fight for the personal income tax. It's okay just to have a personal income tax at a certain level, but because when you know that more than 1 million people who get services in the regions, so they work in Moscow, and that is why so their personal income tax goes to Moscow region, so this is not fair. And the governor, so let him take care of it, because he, and but now the weight. But the land rent is different. So where it goes, land rent, real estate tax. This is the most important part, because in Moscow region, so the guy which is impossible to talk to is the guy who is responsible for the distribution of land. So this is where the civil society needs to pay attention to, because how land is distributed, who pays the taxes, who gets any tax breaks, etc. So it's not ballistic missiles. It's much easier. It's not so complicated. How this money came to the budget, and then we can see so what the municipalities got, because the taxes from individuals so go to the local municipalities, and the other taxes just go to Moscow. That is why so that's a new way how just to talk to the authorities, because it's not where is my 5 kopecks, it's not that point, but where is the hundreds and billions of rubles, so where the money is, where did the money go? And certainly, but you can be shot in process. Thank you. Identify yourself, please. Thank you for your presentation. So very interesting, very broadening. So you spoke about the Chinese investments. So then the Far East. So why? So the Far East does not want the Chinese businessmen to come to Russia. So about 80% of Chinese investments in the Amur region. So 80% of all investments came from China. The Chinese were not allowed because they were interested only in raw materials products, on the commodity projects. So now they're ready to invest in infrastructure, and so then there is certain grounds for mutual understanding. But it's mostly a rental. So for example, bridges against the collateral of the state is possible. So then there's to build the bridge over the Tarabaro Island and continue working inland. And or just a gaming area at the airport of Vladivostok. So that's what they're interested in. But now they're thinking more about the infrastructure. And so the political picture changed. And so the Chinese are part of the natural gas project in Yamal. So the Chinese will help to invest in the Crimean bridge. And so that's why the spectrum and the range of investments will enhance, which is good. But to understand this very specific format of investments, in all sincerity, so I thought about it. So what can we just take a stand and say? So we're not going to let anyone. That's not good. That's not good for the national conscience. So because once. So the Russians understand these people can join this gas project and these people cannot join this gas project. So I think that this balance of interest should be obtained somehow, and so the Chinese should be allowed, and this is good. So, but I'm not afraid of investments in commodities. That's okay too, because if a country has a competitive edge and if it plays by the rules, and it knows exactly how much it's going just to get. Then certainly, so commodities market is not a hurdle in the way of development, because it's a good competitive advantage and should be capitalized upon. So graduate, last year, I would like to get your thinking on this newly formed ministry on the affairs of the Northern Caucasus, because we get some kind of tumors, unexpected system of management appears. So because the Ministry of Regional Development, there is one, then there is another one, then there's plenipotentiary representative of Moscow, and then there are millions of other guys. So what's the point? Why do we need this evolution? So understand there are challenges in the region, so there are many things. But what's at the end of the day? Who stands to gain? So this new system that has been set, and maybe this trend will continue. And so when a new challenged regions will be getting another institution like that, so to settle the issue. So first, it's an instinct, because there's a problem. So we need to set up a system that will take care of this problem. They're trying just to integrate different ministries and agencies, so that would integrate all other institutions on a certain territory. Then desire certainly to steal some money, right? Because for example, so then the ministry of the Far East, so no one just wants to give any money there, because when they set up this new system, so they know that they set it up especially just to steal money from the budget. So then there is a minister who is the integrator. So then there's a plenipotentiary representative of Moscow. It won't work, because it will not function together, because they want to steal money. So and that is why they do not want, and that's why the state does not want to give money to those guys, because the center knows that the money is going to be stolen. That's why the money is not provided. Okay. Next. Altaysky Krai. And so we got nothing, and others are getting something when they're getting nothing. So you spoke about different civil initiatives as one of the factors that might impact the situation. But I get the impression that the civil initiatives they are closely related to the status of economy, because the volunteers so they work for free, but they get some money, and they even just give us their own money just for the cause. And I get the impression that as the economic situation worsens, and so the situation with civil initiatives are going to go down too, for a simple reason that the people who could pay attention to this would be busy with something else. And so could you comment on that very briefly? So there are two types, initiatives, protest initiatives and development initiatives, as I was trying just to identify them. Certainly in difficult times, so the trend migrates to the protest format, and the format of development. So for example, in the eastern Ukraine, so this formats of development, you understand that they can't exist there. And so then the economic base, when it shrinks, so then it forces people to survive and leave the development activity of the civil society and move to another one. And so we fully realize that what we got in the urban environment at the end of the 2000s, so this is the result of the economic growth, because when there is a new stratum, so that takes care of itself, can make money, and I know that there will be certainly a certain interim. And that's because some people certainly will go away, they will stop doing, and so everyone realized, because not everyone is ready to suffer just within the stretch of their lives, and there's just another turn of history in Russia that will take it to another trend of development, because life is short, and people certainly will stop working in this area, and this, or something extraordinary, or if anything goes to extreme, so there will be less quiet times, and people may stay if they see that things have gone to extremes. Timofey Grigoriuk, Yaroslavl, you were talking about the general crisis in the regions, and but before that you mentioned several times in your articles, presentations, about the growth of debt of the regions. So I know Yaroslavl region, so 24 billion rubles of indebtedness of Yaroslavl region to the central budget, and so there is more and more talk about defaults, payment defaults, because the authorities will it default the regions or not? Will it go as far as defaulting the regions? So maybe they strengthen the transfers, and so they will just pour this gap with more money, or they will default the regions. And if they let the regions default, so what is going to be? No, there will be no defaults. So the regional default is impossible. So we're not the United States. When Detroit declares itself insolvent, it's not possible in Russia. And so this is Yaroslavl region, so 50% of their own, so debt, 31% of their own tax revenues. So 3 trillion rubles the debt. That's the amount of debt, and 47% is credits to commercial banks. And so this we decided to. To move the local credits to the central bank credits and cover them with security, and but the exchange rate will be, but the interest rate will be smaller. But the Ministry of Finance has allocated only 100 billion, so because they need 800 billion. So it is going to cover only 25% of the needed indebtedness. But as usual, they will push and pull. So they allocated this amount of money. So the fastest governor, so they will get the money. So they will go back. Then there will be the second wave. So then there is not enough money. So then they will start, give me more money, because the elections is coming up. And so how will this address? So the money will be obtained somehow. But when the amount of problems that needed to be handled in an illegal way, so then So that's because there will be a lot of corruption. So of who is going just to get the money, because that's the only way just to do it. Just that the corruption will be rampant between the state and so. And so, but then the ruble will drop again, and this is $800 billion. This is the total debt amount of debt, so which will be devalued because of the weakening of the ruble. Alex Iganova. So I'm happy to see you personally because I referred to you in my papers. So what is your evaluation and the new capabilities? Will the regional power change or not? Thank you for nice words. Then about governors' elections. I'm not a politologist, and the system is built in a way that now we cannot expect any unexpected things because the incumbents so they get elected. And then in St. Petersburg the situation is not clear because it's difficult to remove Poltavchenko because from the inner circle, and just you cannot tell him don't go for an election, so you cannot do that, but they will resolve this issue through Mironov. Mironov will apply pressure on Poltavchenko and convince him not to go for another term of elections. But so these elections certainly are curtailed, and they are not honest. They're not always fair, and I'm sure that there will be only the budget guys, so the state guys, and only the public officials guys will be elected. But still, it's maybe they're poor elections, but they are elections anyway. So you can tell them that you're unhappy with what they do. So you can always complain. And so everything that changes in Russia towards modernity, so it changes very slowly, and just to make one step forward, two steps back. But still, even such elections are much better than their absence. So there will be, everything will go by plan, with the exception of St. Petersburg, where Poltavchenko needs to be removed. Elena Kozlovtseva. So raising taxes led to the fact that hundreds of businessmen started to bankrupt their businesses and stop their businesses. Yes, and legal entities could not pay. And so the budget started getting less money in tax revenues than before. So is this raising of taxes sufficient or not? Because people stop paying. And what will be the fate of small, medium businesses? So the business will go into the gray zone, and so they will stop paying. So those who control you, so you'll have to pay them. So there will not be any sharp rise of taxes, so they made one stupid thing, but then they went back. But the municipalities certainly will try to do that because the imputed tax is their own tax, and so the small medium businesses is only 3-4% of all budget incomes of Russian Federation. But municipality, but for municipalities it's more money in taxes from small medium businesses. How the mayor, because he is in the vice of tax legislation, so he needs to develop new relationship with small medium businesses to make sure that it will not go into the gray zone and will stop paying taxes officially at all. And so then we'll see how it will play out, because so this is a thin red line, because on the one hand, so the governor needs to talk to small medium businesses and to keep them in the legitimate zone, But other stupid governors will drive them into the gray zone and will stop paying taxes and start paying bribes to the protection money. The third row. Mariel, Republic. So this is very telling table on debts. Many regions, so the state debt is more than 100% of the budget, regional budget. And how are we going just to evaluate the work of the governors by the way their economy, the economy of their region is evolving? So because some governors just are buying expensive cars and building castles for themselves, but will their efficiency be correlated with the efficiency of their economic activity, their economic involvement, how well their region is doing economically, or everything will be valid only by the elections? Yeah. So I don't know this. So then, okay, what we are going to do with regional authorities? So from the top, they will be asking two completely different things. So political quiet in the region, so normal procedures, no outbreaks, then reduction of costs. So because the budget does not want to give much money to the regions, and so very contradictory. Because when you cut costs, so you lose the support of the local population. But when you organize elections, you need support of the local population. It's two contradiction things. It will be a slow evolving process. But the governors, so they can write verses if they want. But the vice governor on budget issues and the vice PR issues. So they need just to somehow just put together impossible things, because the political technologist vice governor just is sent from the center. Yeah, so but the other guy who is responsible for the economics, so they need to find this way to communicate with each other, because they need to resolve specific issues. If they manage just to put together to make it compatible, so then the answer is what the governor should do. No alliances, no coordinated action. Because for this they will be immediately chopping their heads off, and so they know this is a minefield, and so they're afraid, and so no concerted action, no consolidated activities, and yeah, so that's why these petitions and all these petitions may be only individual, but no collective petitions. So only the plenipotentiary representative of Moscow can do a class action petition. So because when we work about so we're not going to talk about so fighting for the institutional interests of the region. So only separate. So then very nimble and smart. So they swim very nicely. But the bloating and the budget debt, because they're trying just to. Because they're doing everything that Mr. Putin tells them, so it's not punishable. So if even the blowout of proportions different, even if the Ministry of Finance is screaming bloody hell, so but if they do as they're told, they will not be punished, even if the situation will be worsened as a result. So thank you for the wonderful session. You raised a very important issue about migration. So this I work at the Moscow office of Pricewaterhouse. So average age is 27, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and we have problems related to the qualified labor force. So I don't want just to hurt Uzbek and Tajiks' feelings, but so then unqualified labor force, so they can do it. But where can we get qualified personnel, professionals, if we just disregard Uzbek and Tajik workers? So that depends on the sphere of economics. Service economy. So the first product is generated by the higher school of economics, and then work polishes them. And so if they can do it, so then they get a foreign manager that does this system. And so then industrial economics. So then you hit So you hit the nail on the head. Because the working class is getting old, so the demand for such, no one wants to work on the conveyor line or the garbage collector. Nobody wants to. So there's no problem with jobs in oil and gas because the salaries are very high. But in other places, so the cost is very high, and that is why it's very difficult. Salaries are low. So the young people from the little towns, so just inviting people from the rural areas, and so then the vocational training at factories, manufacturing facilities. So in some corporations, this format works. So inviting them and getting them to live in hostels, etc. But it's not always working because there are not very many young, able people left in the country. But in the south it works because the country is still alive. In the Urals doesn't work. In the Volga region it works because there are still some young people in the rural area. And then industrial cities, so smaller cities, so a new production manufacturing just is set up, and so on, people flock there. And so that's why the next format will be, so people will be attracted and trained. So foreign labor force will be invited and trained. So they will be certainly filter them. So then the professionals with the knowledge of Russian and large companies are thinking about it. So with families or without families. And this because the first filtration, how they train. So they will start working on the conveyor, because they will just follow the way of Germany, where BMW and Mercedes car manufacturing facilities. So 33% of the assembly line is Turks, Poles, and Ukrainians, and we'll have the same thing eventually. Ushkova, St. Petersburg. So before Russia's accession to the WTO, many businessmen were concerned, and although the taxes will be, the duties will be going down slowly, but there are some disturbing signals. So where there is the highest risk of the accession to WTO, so how the import-export structure will change, and how our accession to WTO of Russia will impact our neighbor Kazakhstan. So the duties will go down slowly because it's one of the conditions of the unified customs union. Because Kazakh duties are low and Belarusian duties are low too. So then there will be. The mineral law will rise. It means that the gas and prices will go up, and so this will last for about 8-10 years. So the gas and this is a long coordination, painstaking coordination. Then the accession to WTO, so it will not impact Russia. And can you separate the effects of stagnation from the effects of WTO? I cannot do that. But to speculate and to blame the WTO for the bad situation that our economy is in is not correct. So we should not be afraid of WTO. And so we just created all the necessary barriers and locking mechanism to protect ourselves. So with the weakening of the ruble, certainly the window of opportunity opens up for Russian manufacturers, especially food industry. This is right, but we should not blame WTO for everything. So that's because there are issues, which is the duties, but it's not the WTO challenge. But is the problem of the Eurasian Economic Union. Okay. Khanty-Mansiysk okrug. Thank you, Natalia Zakarova. Khanty-Mansiysk. So to follow up on the subject about the issue of money, I wanted to talk to get your thinking on the prospects of donor regions. There are very few donor regions, and is there a possibility for us to stop feeding Moscow? And so can we keep our money on our territory? Is it possible to do that? Dear friends, it's not your money. It's not your money. Let's start with that. Let's put it this way. to Minsk Oblast was raised with the whole country. So getting rent after the whole country invested, so you got enough rent. So 90s, 80s, so then some of the rent just went to Minsk Oblast, some went back to Moscow, and then they added another profit tax, and then this feeling of self-importance. And then Minsk Oblast wants more and more and more, and because although just what it was getting, so was given to it by the central budget, and now just they are so happy with their self-importance and they want more money. So the budget deficit is 25%. So if you spend 25% more than you spend, it means that you're a bad businessman. This is bad business. It means that you're hung over after rent. Yeah, because this rent was not made, and you are getting money that has not been made by you. That's why, because you're bad business. Because rent is what you're not using. Yes, you put in the ground. And what is a donor? A donor. Let's agree about the term. So the notion of a donor. So what is it's highly contrived, because formally Minister of Finance calls a donor a region that is not getting only one type of central. So for leveling off of the budget sufficiency. That's it. So the share of this allocation is no higher than 26% of all transfers. 25%, and the rest so can come in flood. And Minsk Oblast was not getting so only this one for leveling of the budget. They're getting huge allocations, huge investments for the balancing of the budget money. So 30% to Minsk Oblast, the total transfer amount. So although in Russia it's 1920, they get 30%, and Tatarstan is a donor. So then in some years before the share of transfer was 38%, but for the budget leveling they were not. So be very careful to play with the word donor, because we cannot realistically say how much went up to the top and how much came back through the ministerial programs, through the Ministry of Finance programs, for agency programs. So more was returned than was what the center got. So if you look at this presentation, and so how much taxes stays and how much goes back to the central budget. So in the majority of the regions, 70–80% of all taxes stays in their territories. It's just not enough. That's it. They are not enough. Yeah, because you are paying. So the main share is the mineral tax, 27%. Hantima says 27% is your share of paying into the center budget, and you say, and you'll be right that you depend on them. But if you try to ask this money back, so this will be not fair, because the distribution of taxes of the rent type has been unequal, and it should be centralized. This is the rule of any budget system, even the federal system, because this tax has been made not by you. Yeah. So how many people just come for 1 month and then go back? So it has nothing to do with you.
Okay, dear colleagues, there will be no more questions. In conclusion, I would like to say that Natalia Vasilyevna gives us a pleasure of her visits for several years, and on our turn, we are giving you a lot of joy and pleasure, because I think talking to the expert is a great event for you. Let's thank her.
Перерыв полчаса.